Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 236. Because of certain reasons, some of you might know, live stream last night, we were all reading the manga together. Shonen Jump found that live stream and they struck the channel and they took away my live stream privileges. Fair, I did something wrong, slap on the wrist, bad guy. So because of that, we are only going to be looking at dialogue. We are not going to be looking at pictures on the screens because, well, Shonen Jump can't copyright dialogue because who knows where that came from. I could have made that dialogue, right? Yeah, they don't know. Anyway, point is, that's gonna be the thing for the video. We're gonna be just looking at dialogue boxes because copyright. Anyway, last week was a tense week on this video. There was things that I said. Some I feel bad about. Some I feel bad that I was such an asshole about it. But I want you all to know that video, I'm not taking anything I said back because that video was an accurate reflection of how I felt at the time. And with the bigger comments, it was more of I have reasons for everything that I said. And so if you want to hear about my rationale for why I said things I said, if you hadn't already read the comments and the people I replied to, you can stick around till the end of the video. Because last night on the live stream, I ended up giving a story time just to tell you a little bit about my perspective and where my mind was at as I was reading last week's chapter. The big thing to take away though is like last week's chapter was a lot. I was tired, and I still feel like bothered about it, but I spent the week also pretty bothered about it after reading all the comments, admittedly. But then you have like that giant disaster that happened in Japan with the KyoAni studio, and it's like it's not worth it to get upset over anime and manga and like talking with other people. It's not worth it at all. Like, we're all here just to have fun with the things that we enjoy. So yeah, why not embrace that? And so last night's live stream was really good. For everyone that was at the live stream, thank you so much. I really appreciated it. But yeah, so if you want to hear more about my personal life story, you can wait till the end of the video. But otherwise, we're going to just jump into the chapter because I know there's you guys just want to talk about the chapter itself. So let's begin. Here we go. First off, general notes. This is another rough chapter. This is largely everything just starts. Well, pretty much everything that was building up gets released. That's pretty much what this chapter is. It's a very, very violent release of pent-up aggression. Pretty rough stuff. I will let you know that as I was reading this chapter, and the guys on the live stream know, like, I want to believe in a conspiracy, man. I want to believe that All For One tampered with some memories here. I want to believe that there's something else that's not being shown, and maybe you can kind of figure that out from last week as well, because that was like my bias last week as well. Like, I want to believe, but the thing is, the more power that you have to give All For One, like the more things that you have to say All For One is responsible for, the more and more ridiculous the situation becomes. Like, I think the best solution writing wise for this is if this is legit, if this is like the legit flashback with no tampering, because that would be brutal, that would be honest, that would be straightforward. It's just, I really hope it's not, because man, like, it's just the way that Shigaraki talks about it throughout this, just it breaks my heart, man. And I'm just really hoping that there's something more, but they realistically might not be. And it's at the point where if it turns out that this was a conspiracy, that if it was All For One, beyond All For One being like, say, like the person who brought Shigaraki home in the last chapter at the beginning, right? Beyond that, if you add any more of All For One's involvement in here, you risk running, you run the risk, there it is, the phrase, got it. You run the risk of making this more unbelievable, and the more unbelievable something gets, the more likely people are to call it an asshole. So we want to avoid that, obviously. But that's where I'm at. So we'll talk about which parts of the chapter I think are kind of weird, or are kind of, at the very least, psychologically disturbing because of the train of thought. And it's funny too, because I remember like last week I was talking to one of the commenters, and man, I'm sorry, I forget your name, but you were the one that made the mention about the emotional manipulation comment, and you also made the mention about Shigaraki being partly at blame, and I was talking like, can we really blame a child? But there's certain parts here where it just Shigaraki goes for it, and it's like, one of the big things I take away from this chapter is that it doesn't matter if they're kids or not. Quirks are the great equalizer, and someone mentioned it in the comments last week that they're a father, and you know, sometimes kids will tell you that, hey, they hate you, and it's something that happens in the spur of the moment. And I'm sure other parents know that too. Like, that's also a feeling I got when I read the final page of last week, that was just a spur in the moment hate. But the problem is, when you have that spur in the moment hate, and you have quirks which can potentially ruin lives, it's pretty much you're giving a kid a gun. And if in that moment of real hardcore rage they decide to act on it, like, it's rough, right? Like, how do we deal with those things that are really, but as adults or as older people, we know they pass, that anger that passes. How do we deal when we see that this person has something that they can use to express their anger with? So that's like, there's a lot of things going on in the chapter. There's a lot of cool imagery. So overall, in terms of my general impression of the chapter, I am really hoping that there's more to the story, but realistically there might not be, because that would be a more solid and stable story, I think. Anyway, we begin. So the first page to start up with is I think page 3 on J-Mani's box, and I checked Viz Media. Viz Media has not uploaded the chapter, so I gotcha. Anyway, the first page that I wanted to look at is the page that had the sister coming out and saying that she was sorry and she was wrong. This was expected. There are things kids do, and what I want to know is, like, to what degree do we accept things as just what kids do? Like, someone could say that kids fighting is just something kids do, right? And I would say, like, siblings lying about each other are something that kids largely do, especially when you're in a situation where a little girl is terrified of her father. You know, it's a bit of a situation where I think we all agree that despite what she did, it made the situation worse. And let's face it, if she hadn't made that move, maybe this doesn't happen. Like, she might have been the trigger of her own downfall, and that adds to the tragedy. But I think we all agree that the little girl did not deserve to go down the way she did, because, like, no one deserves to go down the way that these people did, because they were not the worst people in the world. And I'm saying that very carefully. If you want to know why I'm saying that, I'll explain it at the end of the video. But, like, they were people who were willing to change, and that does mean a lot. So when the moment the girl comes out there, what I read that as is, like, I'd say, like, that just makes the tragedy worse. In all honesty, her coming out to apologize makes the tragedy worse. So that was a pretty rough time. At that point, that page also tells you that well, this is where Tanco starts hyperventilating. And so last night, as I was reading this, I was really confused. Or not confused, but I was really wondering what was going on with the kid's breath. And so people in the comments mentioned that this could be a panic attack, because we go through a little bit where he isn't actually able to speak, like his voice isn't coming out of his throat. So panic attack, that's the theory people had. If we go into, like, hardcore conspiracy, which I really wanted to go into hardcore conspiracy, I'd say, like, oh, maybe All For One stole his voice. But honestly, panic attack makes more sense. We already know that the kid's psychologically vulnerable given, like, how the itch works. Yeah, panic attack. It makes the tragedy worse because it takes away, again, another degree of freedom that the kid could have used to try and get out of the situation. Anyway, the big thing for page 4 is that she comes up, she knows she did wrong, she's trying to say sorry, but then she sees what just happened, and poor Tanco is also freaking the heck out. We go to page 5, and there's a lot of important information on page 5. First, this is where we get the confirmation that his voice isn't coming out, and we also get the extra detail that the itches are getting so bad. So when you read that the itches are getting so bad, I would say, like, you read that should tell you that the itch is linked to the boy's anxiety or to the boy's stress, which just tells you, like, this is a psychological disorder, effectively. Physiological disorder, a stress disorder, maybe stress disorder is the right term for this, because if the itch is increasing like that, it's because this is a weird stress reaction. And it just paints, again, it's something that takes away freedom from the boy. He can't act optimally. After that, The next big important thing to take away from this is that at the time, Shigaraki says that he thought a villain was attacking us. So this was interesting because I had seen some of the spoiler images before this, and my thing was like, why is he grabbing onto the girl when he saw how like this disintegrate worked? But if you put in the part that he's afraid of a villain, then everything goes out the window, right? Because now it's like, this is panic mode. And panic mode, people don't think very well in panic mode. That's why we do drills. We do drills so that our bodies can respond to some degree when our minds are being overloaded by a lot of stimulus. So that was good. The author's including of the whole "I thought some terrible villain was attacking us" actually justifies a lot of behavior. Although Shigaraki goes on to like give us a little bit of a wrinkle to that. And of course, art-wise, that page, brutal, absolutely brutal. Everything in this chapter was brutal. Holy crap. Anyway, the next page is just, again, a art showcase. It's rough. The biggest things that are important in this page are that it begins the wrinkle, and also gives us the information that, yeah, Shigaraki thinks that the person disintegrating his sister is a villain. The one who took down the dog, the one who took out his sister, a villain. Although he goes into the no at the end. So page 7 is where like my conspiracy senses kind of tingle a little bit, because page 7 is where he's doing the turnaround and saying that, thinking back on it now, perhaps I already understood it by then. This is also the page where his other family members are seeing the disaster, what's happening outside. And so, you know, there's a lot of weird things as we're going through this. Like when I read him saying that, thinking back on it now, perhaps I already understood it by then. Like that sounds to me like he's starting to justify his behavior. And I'm just wondering, how much of his memories is he modifying on his own? Biology wise, everyone knows memory is not very trustworthy in general, because I think there's even this like, I don't want to say it's an idea. I think this is like relatively proven, but every time you access a memory, you kind of change something about it. Like the memory loading and saving isn't one-to-one. It's not like perfect. So every time you remember something, it's like something's being changed somewhere, and when it's being stored back in your mind. So what I'm thinking there, because we know that Shigaraki has a malleable mind, I'm wondering, is he modifying his memories to some weird degree? So like when I hear him talking, or when I read him talking about how perhaps he already understood what he was doing back then, it does like kind of raise some alarms, because that adds a different degree of how much fault can you put onto the kid at this point in time. And mind you, one of the big things in page 7 that I did find interesting is that he has one hand outstretched towards his mother, and then one hand on the floor. And he keeps that hand on the floor, and it's very interesting. But again, it's a panic situation. Because the kid's in a panic, it's hard to say what exactly here is malicious and what is happening out of desperation. Anyway, page 8 is where you have the kid saying that all these little things were building up. And so, you know, again, this seems like, if I was going full conspiracy, it feels like he's revising his memories and adding context that wasn't there before. But it may very well have been before. Again, conspiracy. If we're talking about most likely option here, most likely option is that this is actually the case as he was talking about it. I would love to hear what you guys think about that, in all honesty. Anyway, there was something powerful in the way that he revised that, because saying like, why did they take my dad's side? Why would they only tell me to stop crying? These are feelings that we didn't have vocalized before. So having them there like feels like, yeah, okay, like this could realistically be correct. But then you have like the imagery of the kid still reaching out for his mother as he's destroying everything. It's a very contradictory image, and I do like what the author ultimately tried to do with that. Although it got pretty gross, because you go into page 9 and it's like, you know, he's about to go back in for that hug with his mother, like the symbol of his comfort. He's about to go into it, and she just falls onto him as pieces of body. Now, if you look at the way the disintegration worked for all this, people's hands are still intact. Like the mother's hands are still intact by the time she falls onto Shigaraki in that horrible bloody mess. So we talked about it a few chapters back, but like, are those hands actually his parents' hands? Because if the hands are coming out intact, that the author's putting in a detail there, like holy. Anyway, we go to page 10 for J-Mania's box, and you know, speaking of hands, there's a really powerful shot of a hand falling right across Shigaraki's face. You know, again, like the author does like attaching that hand imagery to Shigaraki. It's just, It's kind of intense. Anyway, that page was largely transitionary. The biggest value of that page is just the symbology of the hands and just the transition from the father coming outside to see what had gone on. So on page 11, we have the father witnessing all the destruction. We have him replaying in his mind like he wants to be a happy family. That's been effectively like destroyed just now. Everyone's dead except for his son. And Shigaraki now has his voice and he's able to say, "I'm so sorry." Now, one thing that I did think was interesting is that we know Shigaraki as an adult has like that. He has that focus on his father, or at least on the father hand. So it might be very well that when it came to Shigaraki in, I guess, present time, these final moments actually like imprinted a bit more on him, and so he has a bit more emphasis on his father because this is like the first words that he was able to say after all that destruction. So that was really interesting how he's repeating father over and over, how he's saying he's sorry. Again, we're in full panic mode now. Things are getting worse. Now we go into page 12, and this is again another rough page because it's like there's a dramatic irony getting involved there with the father hitting Shigaraki one more time with the that looked like a branch clipper. He hit him on the head. But anyway, you have that happening again. Shigaraki's destroying everything. The father, the ground's destroying under him. The kid's like doing it. The guy's figured it out, and so he does the whack to like try and knock Shigaraki out. And actually, in this circumstance, if the father managed to knock Shigaraki out, that might have saved his life. In all honesty, like, because we don't know, can Shigaraki's quirk actually activate if he's asleep? Well, hard to say. If we were playing One Piece rules would say if someone gets knocked out, the power is not active. Like, it depends on the power, but most likely that's usually like a solution to a lot of big problems in One Piece, knock out the power user. But that hit on the head was really just the trigger to everything. Because at that point, like, that hit on the head pretty much is just the thing that reminds Tanco of all the hatred he had just a few moments before. So, again, dramatic irony, really well done, because, again, we're at a situation where if the beatings didn't occur earlier, this would not have happened. Anyway, at page 14, we go in with the full intent to kill. As Shigaraki says, he touched his father, and he was full on saying, "Die, die, die." Now, this is like one of those parts where it's like, okay, well, now that you have this kid acting on his hatred, and now he's going in with full understanding of what it is to kill with someone. When you have that full intent to kill, like, what do you say at that point? How redeemable is Shigaraki at that point? Or how redeemable is Tanco at that point? Like, you could still say, like, he's acting on that anger, but at the same time, he understands what he's doing. You know, if it was an adult, and an adult acted in anger with full intent to kill, you know, are we gonna let him off for that moment? Like, he had a flare-up? Well, I don't think so, right? Because you have to penalize that. You know what you're doing to some degree. At that point, like Shigaraki says, he touched his father. He knew full well what that touch was gonna mean. But again, we go back into the conspiracy mode. Like, okay, is this the correct memory? Because if this is the correct memory, you know, it leaves a bigger implication on Shigaraki. And you know, I think back to that comment that I had last week, and you know who you are, but. Saying that Shigaraki has some of the blame as well, and it's like, well, at this situation, like, yeah, like, he got quite a bit more compared to like the last chapter. Shigaraki has a bit more blood in his hands, and this is like blood that he put on himself. Page 15 is just a beautiful page in terms of just like the artistry of it. It's really savage. It's really like just rough and wild. Someone pointed out in the live stream that the tears are drawn in a weird way, and when you look in the tears on that page, if you look very carefully, you'll spot that the tears are coming off of Shigaraki's eyes, because you can see like little white spots or like big white spots in Shigaraki's hair. And what I was thinking when I saw that is that the tears symbolize how enthusiastically he went for his father. It's like he went so enthusiastically that the air hitting against his face was rubbing the tears away, right? Like, just so much air coming forward. That's implying that there's a very quick forward dash. I think that's what the tears are in this scene. It was just to convey a sense of enthusiasm. So when you have such a strong image there, it's like, it adds more weight to what he was saying earlier. And again, I think that the author had a lot of fun with that page. I want to believe that he spent a lot of time working on figuring out how to get like the perfect creepy image. Anyway, we go to page 16, and it's the final page. It's a really good page. I think it's one of my favorite pages in the chapter. Shigaraki confirms to us that he no longer feels that burning itch, which tells us that most likely it was a psychological thing. It was very much a manifestation of a stress disorder. If we go full conspiracy theory, it could be like All For One's just like in a bush somewhere looking with binoculars or something, and he saw that the guy did it, so he like turned off the itch. But again, you put that much power to All For One, and it's like, it's kind of weird, right? Like you can't add so much power to the guy. The last bit of imagery that I want to point out to this page as well is that, you know, as Shigaraki's saying that perhaps hidden somewhere deep in my heart, I had always been hoping for something like this. You have the image of the house being built, and because we have the house metaphor set up in the previous chapter, you know, the house was silently denying everything that Shigaraki wanted to be. You now have the imagery of the house that was his prison has now been destroyed. Shigaraki is free to be who he wants, although there is a bit of irony that Shigaraki in the end wasn't able to be who he wants. He became who All For One wanted him to be. So it's a beautiful page in terms of the imagery going on, and then you have a very bestial looking Shigaraki at the bottom, or I should say Tanco. You know, I keep getting the names mixed up here. Now, one thing I want to say here, because this was something I asked during the live stream, was just, we know that All For One came to him eventually, and you know, All For One coming to him during a situation like this, this is such a loud event that realistically neighborhood heroes would have noticed, right? People would have noticed that something went wrong, because like a whole house just fell down. And I wondered, okay, like how quickly did All For One come here? And I thought he must have been there like super quick in order to pick Shigaraki up, because otherwise like other people would have found him. But then someone pointed out that Shigaraki may have gone on the run, and I can't remember which commenter did this, but thank you so much for doing that. But yeah, pointed out Shigaraki could have been on the run and that maybe heroes were hunting him. If that's what happened next, that's pretty rough. That's a pretty rough bit to go through. But I'm very interested to know what happens immediately after this, if Shigaraki goes on the run or if he's found immediately by All For One. Because again, if All For One spots him, that adds more credence to All For One being the one that screwed everything up. Who knows? Anyway, that was the end of the chapter. That was the play-by-play analysis. Like I said, I think it was a strong chapter. It was a lot of emotional release. It was rough. The irony is not lost to me. The tragedy was well done. I'm like I said, I leave the chapter hoping that there's something else, right? That there's some kind of manipulation here somewhere. But I know that it would be probably more solid for the story to play it straight and just say like, no, this is like the 100% truth. That's just solid. But hey, I want the feels. I'm hoping for something else, man. I'm hoping, praying, not praying, hoping. But yeah, so that's the end of the chapter. Okay, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to add there, but I don't think I have it. So let's go very quickly into talking about last week, just to get things sorted out. So last week, one of the big comments that I said that people noticed and called me out for was saying that this was not the worst, and the way I said it was very rude. For that, you know, I could have done better. But what I want to convey to make sure everyone understands this is that you have to remember, I was coming into that chapter expecting Shigaraki to be the victim of an abusive household, in terms of like there was a drunk in there, like his father was a drunk, and I was expecting like the family to be largely more negligent of Shigaraki. So the reason that I said it wasn't the worst is like, one, because I've seen worse imagery, and I pointed out the Bakugo hitting Izuku, because just in terms of like the imagery of kids getting hit, it's kind of like it's kind of used a lot in Hero Academia to like various degrees, depends on what the author is conveying. But you know, just that imagery itself didn't really affect me personally on an emotional level. I will tell you though, like Shigaraki being locked outside, I found that much more crueler. I found that to be cruel and unusual punishment, because that's leaving a kid out with a stress, an allergy from their perspective, and like that one really touched me a lot more. I might be just a little bit more jaded when it comes to kids getting beat, but that one did really bother me. So that's like the context for that. It's a combination of I've seen worse in anime and manga. Like Berserk is one of the worst iterations of child abuse. And so, you know, I'm comparing that, and also because like in my head I was thinking that there was going to be worse, and to some degree for the tragedy to work, like, you know, there has to be that innate understanding of what makes a situation terrible. And like you can say, like, looking at this chapter and the previous chapter, the author definitely knows what makes situations worse. What makes this situation more of a tragedy is that there was that little glimmer of hope. There were people that were repentant. Like, you know, you look at this situation, look at the Endeavor situation. Like, this is a situation where you have people potentially making a difference. It's that snuffed hope that makes the tragedy more accentuated. In my mind, I think that's how you make tragedy work. If you get people playing the what if game, like what if things could have gotten better, you know, you can make that tragedy worse. So just by the very nature of that this was a tragedy, you know, like there could have been worse situations that would have made even the death of the people involved feel much more earned, as opposed to like, this is a nasty situation all around. I hope you guys understand that. Like, it's just it's from a very objective point of view, as someone else kind of pointed it out last week. And oh man, this is such a long video. Let's just hurry up and get it done. One more thing I want to say is that I want you guys to know, in terms of my bias, like I am very sympathetic towards parents who notice that they did something wrong and they try to fix it. And this is part of the story time. For people that were in the live stream, you guys know the story, but the effective story is, for about 2 years of my life during my teenage years, I worked as an after-school volunteer for a program that was specifically for at-risk kids in grade 6. The idea was, like, the school pointed out some kids who were not doing great in school. Some of them couldn't read right, some couldn't do math or anything like that. So they would send them to the after-school program, and there, you know, it'd be me, my cousin as another volunteer, and some teachers. We'd be there, we'd help them out, we'd help them with homework, we'd have home-cooked food for them so they could eat, we'd teach them manners and all that kind of stuff. But the point was that these were kids who were noticed as at risk, and they were just, maybe their home life wasn't super stable, so we had to kind of step in there to like help them out a little bit. The point here though is, like, in that situation, you have a lot of parents who, just by the very nature of the fact that their kids are there, they might not be around for their kids as much. Or like in some cases, like there's a problem where maybe situations at home got a little bit too out of hand and like things had to change a bit. Some of those kids did not have maybe all of their family support system there. Although I will say, like, I don't think like anyone was getting it like Shigaraki there, but you can never be too sure. You never know who left who, you never know. And I'm saying who left who a lot because it's a lot of times it's like, you know, to be fair, the teachers did try to shield the volunteers a lot from like the little workings there, but the general idea was like, you know, it was tough to be around all the time, and that caused little problems here and there. But the point was, you know, we were there to help out these kids, and the very fact that the parents did want their kids to be well off, or to, like, they were doing the best that they could with the hand that they were dealt. What I really want to convey there is, like, I'm sure that the parents that had those kids coming to that after school program, I'm sure they made some degrees of mistake. And mind you, like, these are the parents that I think were largely good. Like, one of my favorite parents was this Rastafarian, or a Rasta, that he was dating this one troubled kid's mother. And he would come every so often, and he would just sit down and watch the kid. And man, let me tell you, whenever he came in, that kid shut up. He was one of the biggest talkers in that room, but he was just shut up. And it's like, you know, you have a situation where this guy stepped up into this kid's life. Who knows what happened to the father originally? I don't know. I didn't get told that information. But it just showed, like, people, you give them an opportunity, and they can step up. Mind you, there are also people that you give them an opportunity, they say they're going to change, and then it's like, no, they don't change. They only change for all of 2 days, and then they go back to the same habits, at which case it becomes really stressful situations where you have to start playing that game of like, all right, how much information can we get here? It was an interesting experience, but the point of the matter is, or the parents that knew that they were struggling and needed help, and that were willing to come out and accept the help, you know, I do have a soft spot for them. So the long story short for that story is just, I worked as a volunteer in a spot where there were a lot of kids who were at risk, and the parents, you know, they tried to be there when they could, but there were some little moments there that felt really nice, or like that were very heartwarming to see. And so it's just, it goes back to the last chapter. That moment when you have the parent noticing or noting that this was too far, that's so much more significant than a parent that doesn't notice what's going on, because at least there's a potential for like, okay, that can get better, that can be fixed. If not, you know, things are gonna get worse. Yeah, that's it. That's the story time. Point of the story is like, I'm sympathetic towards parents that try to make a change. You know, it's a long, arduous road, and sometimes that they aren't able to make that change, and you know, hard choices have to be made. But like I said, the big point is it's valuable when someone realizes that they're going the wrong way and they need help. And that's why I'm largely sympathetic. Anyway, that's it. It's a long video, but it's a story time. So like I feel like only the people who care are here. So thanks for watching. Anyway, yeah, guys, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day. Oh, and man, what a long video.